On the evening of June 20, 1991, 19-year-old Christina Burgin, a student at McNeese State University, an employee at a pizza outlet, went to a lounge in Lake Charles, Louisiana, with a couple of her friends. There she met an old friend, Michael Roland, and after a little chat, he introduced her to his friend, Leslie Dale Martin. The two seemed to hit it off and were seen dancing together and sharing alcohol drinks. In the early hours of June 21, the night came to an end, and everyone went home. There, Christina asked Martin for a lift home, and they were last seen leaving the lounge together. Christina was not seen alive again. Leslie Dale Martin was born on April 24, 1967, in Shreveport, Louisiana. In 1984, almost 17 at the time, he pulled a knife on his 14-year-old sister and forced her to have sex with him while their mother was in the hospital. His mother found out and he was convicted of sexual battery and was sentenced to 10 years but served only 5 and was released in early 1990. Almost 15 months after his release, on the evening of June 20, 1991, Martin and a friend, Michael Roland, went to a lounge in Lake Charles, Louisiana. At the lounge, they met 19-year-old Christina Burgin, student at McNeese State University. Roland and Christina knew each other, and he introduced her to Martin. The two were seen dancing together and sharing alcohol drinks. In the early hours of June 21, at about 1:30 a.m., Christina asked Martin for a lift home, and they were last seen leaving the lounge together. Martin drove with Christina in his truck and parked on a dirt road in Iowa. Christina, who was heavily intoxicated, was then raped by Martin in his truck. He basically forced himself on her after she refused him because of her period. Martin later said he had to have her and overpowered her, although she resisted and fought back. After the sexual assault, Christina threatened to report him to police for rape. Fearing a return to jail, Martin choked her in his truck with his hands, then pulled her out of the vehicle and strangled her with a rope, placed a board over her neck and jumped on it several times until she died, and then cut her eyes with a knife and left her in a pump house in the southwestern Louisiana town of Iowa. 6 hours later, at about 7:30 a.m., Martin visited Leo Guambilo, his carpentry supervisor, on a recent job, and stated that he had met a blonde college student the night before, left the lounge with her, and woke up in Galveston Beach, not knowing where he was. Martin's clothes were dirty, and he pointed to vomit in his ashtray, stating, "I guess the bitch threw up in my truck." When Martin returned to his aunt's home, where he was residing in at the time, he was wearing different pants and he had no shirt or shoes. He washed his clothes and his truck seat cover, telling his aunt that they got muddy when he engaged in mudslinging with Roland. Martin also had scratches on his chest and back, a bite mark on his shoulder, and a wound under his tongue. He told his cousin he had fought with a country boy in the lounge. The same morning, Martin told another friend, who he met in his past imprisonment, that he thought he may have killed someone the previous evening, and asked him to provide him with an alibi by saying he had spent the night at his home. The friend refused, and Martin told him that on the way back to Lake Charles, the women threatened to report him for rape. Martin also detailed what he did to the girl, and mentioned something about a shed in the Iowa area. Later, the friend told Martin's story to his girlfriend, but they deemed it unreal until they heard 9 days later that a girl was missing after leaving the lounge. Immediately, they reported the story to police, who found the victim's decomposing body in a search of sheds in the Iowa area. The police found a rope around her neck and a wooden board nearby, which contained human blood. The police then obtained a warrant and arrested Martin and charged him with first-degree murder. At his trial, several witnesses testified against him after Martin confessed to them details of the crime, including an inmate with whom he was incarcerated after his arrest. Due to the conditions of Christina's body, there was minimal physical evidence. However, blood was found on Martin's clothes, truck seat cover, and the wooden board recovered near her body. In May 1992, Martin was found guilty of killing Christina and was convicted of first-degree murder, and was sentenced to death as a result of aggravated rape, and that the offense was committed in a especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel manner. Years later, in November 1999, Martin and 3 other inmates on death row attempted to escape from prison using smuggled hacksaw blades. The 4 men cut through their cell doors and a steel-barred window. The men were caught about 2 miles from their cells and were returned to death row. The group had paid a correction officer to bring them the blades they used in their escape. Ultimately, 2 guards were fired and another 2 were demoted following the escape attempt. In January 2002, 2 death row correction officers overheard Martin talking with another inmate about another escape attempt. Martin planned to take hostages and would commander a vehicle which he would use to ram through the prison gates. Because of this, Martin was moved to a cell right next to the execution chamber, where he would be unable to take hostages and would only have a single guard to talk to. In the same month, Martin was scheduled for execution on February 8, 2002. On February 8, less than 30 minutes before he was scheduled to be executed, the execution was called off by the US Supreme Court, as they wished to consider whether they wanted to hear an appeal by Martin. However, on March 28, the entire court refused to act on the request, and Martin was rescheduled for execution on May 10. On May 10, 2002, Martin was executed at Louisiana State Penitentiary by lethal injection in front of 13 witnesses, including members of the victim's family. He was injected with 3 drugs, one to put him to sleep.
The first drug administered is sodium thiopental, a barbiturate that acts as an anesthetic to render the person unconscious.
The second to paralyze him.
The second drug is pancuronium, a muscle relaxant that causes body-wide paralysis.
And the third to stop his heart.
The third drug is potassium chloride, which stops the heart, causing cardiac arrest.
His last meal consisted of boiled crawfish stew, a garden salad with Italian dressing, oatmeal cookies, and whole milk with chocolate syrup. He did not make a final statement before his death, but did mouth the words, "You're fired," to his defense attorney after the lethal injection drugs were injected. He was pronounced dead at 8:16 p.m.